Okay, so today we're going to talk about media exposure. So one of the first things I want to talk about are subliminal stimuli. So let's put the Lyman into subliminal. So what does Lyman mean?
Threshold.
Lyman means a threshold. That's exactly right. So subliminal, it's pronounced subliminal, but if you think about it as being subliminal, what would that mean? Under. Sub means under or beneath. So something that's subliminal or subliminal is something that is beneath someone's threshold. Okay? So what exactly is a threshold? Pardon? A limit? Okay, I'll agree with that. It's a limit. What type of limit?
According to definition of the dictionary,
It's a what or a starting point?
Entering or start.
Yeah, it's some point at which something begins, at which something changes. There's a starting point. In America, there's this tradition when people get married. I'm not sure if the tradition is here as well, but the husband will pick up the wife before they go into their home. Do they have a tradition here? They say they cross the threshold. They're outside of their home. The husband picks up the wife, and they cross the threshold. The threshold here is a threshold between the inside and the outside, right? So inside, cross the threshold, outside, cross the threshold, inside, right? There's this point at which there's a change. When you pass that point, you change states. You go from inside to outside or vice versa. So this threshold, even though it's this physical threshold border that distinguishes between inside or outside, there's also this symbolic threshold between their life before they were married and now we're together. Here's our home life together. It's a symbolism of the marriage. In America back during slavery times, the slaves, they came up with a different type of marriage ceremony, and they jumped the broom. The husband and the wife, they would get married, and to symbolize their new marriage together, people would hold a broom and they would jump over it, demonstrating that they were going from one state where they weren't together into this new life together. So, something that's subliminal is something that's beneath the threshold, and the threshold is basically just some point where it defines a change. So let's go back to signal detection. Remember when we were flipping the coins? Let's assume that you're not sensitive. If you're not sensitive, what does that mean? You can't tell what the coin is. If you're not sensitive, you don't know if it's heads or it's tails, right? Now let's further assume that you're not biased. If you're not biased, what does that mean?
You don't prefer one.
That's right, you don't prefer one answer over another. You don't say, oh yes, I prefer saying yes or I prefer saying no. So if you're not sensitive, that means you don't know what it is. If you're not biased, that means you're just as much likely to say yes as you are to say no. And if this is the case, how often are you right? 50% of the time. That's exactly right. 50%, this is the threshold. Right? We're assuming that there's this null hypothesis, that people aren't sensitive, they're not biased, and if this is the case, they should get it right on average 50% of the time. If they are sensitive or they are biased, they'll get it right or wrong more than 50% of the time, and they'll get it right so much more or so much less of the time that it's greater than what you would expect due to chance, right? Where the p-value sort of fits in. So, how could you create a subliminal message? There's a link on the study guide to a site that talked about priming. What was the priming thing about? With priming, they created subliminal messages. How do you do it? If you want to create a subliminal message, this means that it's beneath their threshold for recognizing that it's there. It would mean that I show you something Like, Rayhan,
Yeah.
how much money is this? What?
10.
It was 10. Yeah, it was 10. So that was above her threshold, I'm assuming, since she was able to recognize what it was. Right? If it was beneath her threshold, she would have said, I don't know. Does that make sense? So how can you create a stimulus? I just tried to create a stimulus that was beneath her threshold and I failed. What other things could I do besides showing something from really far away? Okay. Although, how many hands or fingers? How many fingers am I holding up?
4.
4. Okay. See if I can do this beneath his threshold for recognition. Okay. So I'm going to hold up some fingers. How many did I hold up?
4. 3.
It was 3. It was 3. Good. He wasn't able to recognize it. What did I do? What was the difference between this and that? The speed. So this, he got to see it for a long time. But this, he only got to see for a split second. I'm getting dizzy. Right? So if we present something quickly, then people might not have an opportunity to process that information. Right? So we can present things quickly to get things beneath their threshold. And we can do some other things too. So in the priming examples, what's happening is that scientists are briefly presenting strings of letters, right? Sometimes these strings of letters make words, like word. Other times these strings of letters aren't words. Door. So what we can have people do is try to recognize whether something is a word or not, and we're going to vary how much time they have to process that information. Does that make sense? So we're going to vary the exposure time, and we're also going to mask the string to disrupt sensory memory. Remember sensory memory? I said that it's very brief, but it like continues to hold an image or a sound for a little bit of time. And I gave the example of your mother saying something, oh, Hilal, could you go and get this at the store? And you say, what? And then you say, oh yeah, I got it, never mind. Because it was still in your sensory memory. So we need to disrupt that. So when I spun around, he saw this, but in the same place that he's looking at, I'm creating new signals, right? Here's my shirt, here's my back, and everything else. I'm disrupting his sensory memory. So if I present these strings of letters, and then shortly thereafter mask them with a string of X's to disrupt their sensory memory, then I might be able to create something that's subliminal. So all we want to know is, what's the string word? So let's do an example. Up here, I'm going to present a word. You guys can try to tell me if it's, or I'll present a string of letters. You can tell me if it's a word or not.
Example.
Yeah, it's that example, right? If I would have presented that more quickly, it would have been more difficult. Does that make sense? So often in these situations, they're only presenting something for like maybe 50 milliseconds. It's 1/20th of a second. It's very, very quick. Or even faster sometimes. 1/60th of a second often. So if we create these subliminal stimuli, do they have any effect? They do have an effect. So one type of effect is this priming effect. So with the prime, we're going to show someone one word, and we're not going to have them do anything with that word. We're going to ask them if another thing is a word or not. So we can show someone doctor very, very quickly and then mask it. We can ask them, did you see anything? And they say, no, I just like saw flash. There were X's and that's it. So they don't have any conscious awareness that they saw it, right? It's beneath their conscious threshold. But then what we do later is we show them another word for a long time. And we ask them to, as quickly as they can, decide whether or not it's a word. So if it's a word, they're going to press one button. If it's not a word, they're going to press another button. So I show them doctor, I mask it, I remove it, then Then I show them nurse, and they say, yes, it's a word. Now, interestingly, people are much faster to say yes to nurse if they got doctor before. Why would this be? Why might someone be faster to say yes to nurse after they see doctor?
Because they are relations.
Yeah, doctors are associated with nurses, right? If I had you guys pull out a piece of paper and I could give you a word and I could ask you to write down 10 things that come to your mind when I say the word. So I say doctor, and a lot of you are probably going to say things like nurse, hospital, surgeon, blood, things that are related to doctor. So the idea is that even though the people aren't consciously aware that they've seen the word doctor, that this information is still affecting their processing. It's activating other nearby ideas. So when they see nurse, they're already sort of thinking about nurse. In the study, I think I sent you guys a link to this. Did you guys get a link to the Lipton-Eye study? All right. There was a study that some researchers did where they showed people very briefly the words Lipton Ice. And then later they asked people, how thirsty are you? Would you like something to drink? And then they gave them an opportunity. What would you like? Would you prefer Lipton Ice or would you prefer water? Right? And they had a control group. So one group saw Lipton Ice, the other group didn't see any subliminal message. And what happened? The people that were thirsty, who saw Lipton Ice, were more likely to choose Lipton Ice than the people that didn't see that subliminal message. So it worked. It affected their behavior. Subliminal messages first came to be notorious because there was some discussion about a movie theater operator who wanted to increase their sales. Right? How do the movie theaters make their money? They make some money by selling tickets, and they make more money by selling popcorn and soda and candy and things, right? Yeah, so they wanted to advertise for people to go get popcorn or go get soda, but they wanted to do it in a subliminal way. So Freud, which we'll talk about later, he had this idea that the things that we aren't aware of, our unconscious, has a big effect on our consciousness. So he thought, okay, if I can say, eat more popcorn, and give that message to the unconscious, then the unconscious will say, oh, I'm hungry, I have to go eat more popcorn. So when people found out about this, they freaked out. They said, no, this is completely unethical. You're giving us these messages that are telling us to do things, and then we're like robots. We're going off and doing them because we saw the subliminal message. Who here seen Fight Club? 3, 4, 5, 6 people. Okay. Those of you who haven't seen Fight Club, it's a really, really good movie. And they talk about subliminal, not advertising, but subliminal messages in Fight Club. So this guy, he has a job as a movie projectionist. And he shows kids films. So you go watch Disney, Cinderella, or Beauty and the Beast. But what he does is he'll take like one frame of pornography and stick that one frame of pornography into Beauty and the Beast. So the Beast is singing to Belle, oh Belle, I love you, we're going to have a great life together. It's, Disney has copyrighted the original, so I shouldn't sing it. Anyways, so, they're doing the regular movie, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's this single frame of pornography. And this is very, very brief. It's like 1/20th of a second. And he says that people aren't aware of what they've seen. They don't know that they've just seen pornography, but they know they didn't like it. And then you see the kids start to cry. So there is actually some evidence that subliminal primes, that subliminal messages can have an effect. Now the big question is, are these subliminal messages strong enough to produce the effects that people were worried about? If I'm showing you a television show and I put one frame of a message that says "Buy Cola Turca," how powerful is that? Is that better than showing a 30-second commercial? How strong are the subliminal messages? we said, they're kind of strong. They influence behavior. They affect people's ability to recognize nurse. They affect people's ability to choose Lipton over other beverages.
I think that would be better because we won't know that the thing is placed there intentionally to kind of manipulate us.
So longer would be better because, say it again?
The handling of the frame will be better than the commercial one.
So just a single frame would be better than the commercial one? Why?
Because it's a subliminal message.
Yeah.
And actually we won't know that was the intention of putting it there. So it's going to affect us and make us to do what
Yeah, so maybe if you can present this quickly and people aren't aware that it's there, it could have a larger effect, right? If you meet someone and you know that they're trying to sell you something, you can say like, oh no, I'm not interested. You can prepare yourself and you can be on guard for the messages. When a commercial comes on the TV, you say, oh, it's a commercial, I can ignore it, right? But if it's in the middle of the movie, you're not ignoring it, you're not prepared to resist any information that's telling you to buy something, so maybe it could be stronger. So this is actually maybe a good reason to create laws against subliminal advertising, and there are laws against subliminal advertising in a lot of countries. But it turns out that subliminal messages are pretty weak. These effects on doctor and nurse, these are small little effects. People are a few milliseconds faster to say nurse after they've seen doctor than when they haven't seen doctor. So it's a tiny effect, and they also don't last very long. And also, in this Lipton Ice study, this only affected the people that were already thirsty. So people that were already intending to get a drink were affected by which drink that they were going to choose. So it's not like you could be in a movie just sitting there and see this image that says, eat more popcorn, and then say, oh, boy, I'm hungry now, let's go buy some popcorn, right? So it doesn't work. It's not nearly as strong as people initially assumed. So it doesn't work like people in the media might lead you to believe. Okay, angelic advertisements, the halo effect. I was really surprised when I was first hanging around like Sultanahmet and visiting other places. People would come up to me, they would know I was a foreigner because of my shoes. I don't wear like nice shoes, I wear athletic shoes. So people, they knew I was a foreigner. And they would come up and they were asking me where I was from. Everyone seemed to like think that like I was from Texas or something. I don't know what is it with Texas. Anyway, I would tell them I was from Chicago and they would all say, oh, Michael Jordan. All of you know who Michael Jordan is? He's like really famous. I'm from Chicago, so I know why he's famous, but I'm not so sure why he's so famous over here. Anyway, people use people like Michael Jordan to advertise products. So Michael Jordan advertises Gatorade, he advertises for some cars, he advertises for underwear too. Sometimes you might meet someone and they say like, oh, I went to Harvard. And what do you think when you hear that? Or maybe I went to Roberts College. What do you think? Wow, you went to Roberts College? You must be really smart. Oh, Harvard, wow, good for you. So people make this assumption about people and things based on where they come from and the things that they're associated with. And this effect depends on you. So Erdogan, I love this because it looks like he actually has a halo. So if you support AKP, then you probably have very positive feelings about Erdogan. If you don't support AKP, you might not like Erdogan at all, right? So the effect of someone can depend on you. If you have no knowledge who this person is, I'm from America, so the stereotypical American doesn't know about foreign affairs. And this was true. I didn't, at least for me, I didn't know who Erdogan was until I came here. So I had no knowledge. So if Erdogan was telling me to buy Coca-Cola, I'd be like, who's he? Actually, there might be a halo effect coming from the Coca-Cola to Erdogan. I might say, oh yeah, Coca-Cola, that's good stuff. and they're advertising it with him, so he must be a good guy too. Does that make sense? If you have positive knowledge, then you're going to get this halo effect. So if Erdogan starts selling Cola Turca, then the people that like Erdogan, they might start to think more highly of the Cola Turca. Think about classical conditioning, right? You associate two things together. So if you like Erdogan, you see a picture of Erdogan, you feel good. Yeah, Erdogan, oh, I like him. He's what Turkey needs. So you feel good. This is like an unconditioned response to seeing Erdogan, if you like him, right? So then you take this product, a new product, Cola Jerka, that no one's ever heard of before, and no one has any feelings about this Cola Jerka, and you pair it with Erdogan enough times, you do this again and again, and the hope is that through classical conditioning, you'll start to respond positively to the Cola Jerka, right? Now, this isn't going to work for the people that don't like Erdogan. For the people that don't like him and think that he's an idiot, when they see him, they'll have bad feelings. Oh, man, he's, we don't need Erdogan. We need a stronger Kemalist. We need a stronger secularist. Erdogan, çok. Right? So they have this automatic, unconditioned response to seeing Erdogan. And then by pairing Cola Jerka, they say, yeah, Erdogan's a jerk, and so is the Cola Jerka, and you'll have a negative or a reverse halo effect. Does this make sense? This is why you see celebrities being used in advertisements, and not nobody. Or maybe when you get a nobody, you use a particular type of nobody. So, if it's not a famous person who's advertising the product, what type of person do marketing firms often use? Healthy, strong, is that beautiful? Yeah, beautiful people. They use beautiful people. And people feel good when they see images of beautiful people. You see an image of someone that's all deformed, and you feel like sick. It's this unconditioned sort of response. So we don't want to use someone who's shirkin or ugly to advertise our product. We want to get someone who's beautiful. That people say, oh yeah, she's beautiful. She must be smart. She must be whatever. Oh, and she likes this product. I want to be a beautiful person too. Right? So beauty in the media. Which doll is the pretty doll? This one. The darker one is the pretty doll. MashaAllah. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys a video of an experiment that looked at how children reacted to these two types of dolls. So, yes?
At the end of video, the professor, I don't know which she said that according, I don't understand the person. What's the person?
So they said 15 out of 21 people preferred the white doll. And they didn't just use people. So we don't know about people in general. They used black kids, right?
Yeah.
So 15 out of 21 black kids preferred the white doll. This is like so depressing for me. Like, I want people to like who they are. Oh, which doll is the good doll? The white doll. Which doll's the black doll? Ugh, the black doll. Which doll looks like you? The black doll. Ugh. This is really, really sad. Why might this happen? And this was done in America.
Media.
Yeah, media. So you see in the media, the television shows, lots of white people, they're happy, and then maybe they have the black friend. I remember when I was here the first week, I was watching some show, some Turkish show, and they had like cab drivers. You guys know the show? They had cab drivers, they'd sit around and talk, and then they would like do things and whatever. Anyway, they had like all these Turkish people, and all the Turkish people seem fairly normal. They're exaggerating their emotions a bit. Oh, but then they have one black person come on, and she's dressed like a voodoo priest. Oh yeah, what's happening here? And then they have this one Asian guy come on. Right? So, in America, oftentimes black people in the media are portrayed as being ignorant, as being dumb, as being criminals. Right? Now, you might expect white kids to pick the white dolls. But having so many of the black kids pick the right dolls suggests that there's a problem. Interestingly, like 15 out of 21 picked it, right? So it wasn't everybody. So the question is this enough to conclude that they actually did have a preference for the white dolls? So in order to do this, we would want to see that they're picking the white dolls more than the black, more than you would expect by chance, right? So if you calculate the p-value for this, the p-value, that is the probability that you would observe 15 out of 21 people pick the black doll, it's less than 0.05. So this is a statistically significant result, not only in the original study, but in this follow-up study that I believe was done by a high school student. So this suggests that media, even though it might not have this huge effect in the subliminal priming effect, it can have a huge influence on how you feel about yourself. You know, you see the people on the advertisements, and they're beautiful people. They're thin people. So, you know, I watch the advertisements, and then I look at myself, and I think, Chokshi's mother. Right? So this can actually have a negative effect on people's self-esteem. All right, why is there so much sex in the media? Or maybe not sex, but allusions to sex. So this is an advertisement for some jeans that apparently was out in Turkey a few years ago. So they were, you know, advertising jeans, and they weren't actually having sex, right? You can't use that. But they're alluding to sex. There's this other advertisement, not in Turkey, but they wanted to advertise a skin lotion, right? They want to show how nice and smooth and soft your skin can be. So what parts of people's bodies get especially like rough? People's knuckles, elbows, and knees are often much rougher than flat parts of the body, right? So to demonstrate how good their product is, they had a picture of someone's knees. So what I'm going to show you are knees. They're not breasts, but they certainly look like breasts from far away. Why did they show knees like this?
More attractive, maybe.
More attractive. So you see knees like this, and what do you think? I remember when I saw this, like I did a Google search for sexy ads. And I saw this. I'm like, oh my goodness, is this from France? Like I thought it was breasts until I zoomed in, and then you can see that these are actually thumbs. So it's someone's knee like that with the thumb underneath it, right? But it caught my attention. It's like, whoa. What do people associate with sex? So think about classical conditioning. How could classical conditioning work by using sex or sexy things in advertisements?
Probably you can't resist it. It's good that you just have to.
A lot of people have strong positive feelings about sex. Like, oh yeah, I'd like to have sex. Ooh, that's sexy. Ooh, right? So by using something sexy in an advertisement, this could create an association between these positive feelings that you feel from seeing something sexy and then the product itself. Does that make sense? So we can see a classical conditioning link. And think about the halo effect too. Oh yeah, we like sex, but remember there can be reverse halo effects. So not everyone thinks that sex is great and should be out in the public. A lot of people think that no, that should be behind closed doors, right? There's actually been some research that suggests that sexy advertisements don't work the same for everybody. Guess which sex responds more positively to sexy advertisements? Do males or females respond better to sexy advertisements? Yeah, it turns out that males tend to respond better to sexy advertisements. And also their attention grabbing, as someone mentioned. And the effects can depend on the audience. And if you get too sexy, people can start to be offended. And if you're offending people, then you're actually decreasing the likelihood that people are going to buy your product. In fact, if you offend them enough, they might organize boycotts against your products. So this can be a tricky thing for people in advertising. How do you use something that's sexy enough to get attention and to, have people have positive feelings without making people angry? Remember one of the sexier ads that I've seen was in Üsküdar. And I thought it was an advertisement for clothing. And there was a Bashutlu woman in what I thought was a dress. But it turned out it wasn't a dress at all, it was a bathing suit. And this woman was beautiful, beautiful face. You couldn't see a lot of the rest, but it was a very, very attractive woman. They didn't have to use a very, very attractive woman, right? But they used someone who was very attractive, who was sexier, to have these positive effects on people's associations with the product. Yeah?
There was a high school in the US, and in the US they have these yearbooks every year. So there was a girl that she gave a picture that showing herself not actually nude, but almost it's not appropriate. So she insisted that it be in the yearbook, so people were offended. The committee just took up.
Yeah, so some yearbook committees allow people to submit their own pictures to put in the yearbook. And if they don't have pre-existing rules about what's appropriate and what's not, sometimes you'll find people who will submit something. And the yearbook committee apparently thought that this was offensive. Now, people like to look good in their yearbook pictures. People like to look good in their Facebook profile pictures. I don't know why. Apparently, a lot of people think that the duck face looks good. But even without the duck face, you find people they're from the side, they're looking nice, as opposed to right? They want to look good. They want people to see them and have these positive feelings, not negative feelings. And even, there's a lot of people here that don't use pictures of themselves on Facebook. They use other things. But what things did they use? Did they use pictures of dead people and corpses? No, they use rainbows and kitties and things, right? They want people to have positive feelings about them. They're marketing themselves. All right, porn rules, yeah! So there's this study that showed that as the amount of porn consumption went up, so here's 1988, here's 2005, and people are watching more and more and more and more porn every year. Now, you might think this is a bad thing, but this is a great thing. Porn rules. Look at this. This is the rape rate. So in 1988, people were getting raped all over the place. But then as people started watching more porn, the rapes went down. So, should we start showing porn to kids in high school?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Actually, it stimulates for people. I think I've read it somewhere. For people who are actually raped, even though maybe it's less now. Actually, they usually find these adult materials with them.
So you're saying that the porn makes people more likely to rape? But if that was the case, we should see rape rates going like this, right?
Maybe now.
So that your argument basically isn't.
Okay, I think it's maybe in 1988 this sexual openness was not as much as now. I know it. In maybe the communities all over the world, even in America, they were much more conservative than now. And we can infer that from culture, from movies, from magazines, from a lot of things.
Yeah. So I have this asterisk up here, right? The correlation does not mean causation. Just because people are watching more porn and people are raping each other less often doesn't mean that watching porn decreases rape. Right? What could be another explanation for it? What came out around here? I remember the first time I did something, and it was here in 1994. 1994, I went to college, and I had internet access for the very first time. What can you get on the internet? Everything you want, including porn. There's this video on YouTube that says the internet is for porn. It's actually a pretty funny video. And I would encourage you to watch it. There is no porn on the video, but they talk about porn. Anyway, so here in 1990 whatever, the internet becomes available broadly, and people are able to spend more time on the internet, which means that they can get pornography more easy, right? How many of you guys spend an hour or more on the internet every day?
I do.
So the rest of you don't spend an hour or more. That's actually really good. Hopefully you're studying with that. If you are at home, busy on the internet, and busy downloading porn, and busy doing whatever with that porn, this means that you're not out on the street, right? So it might not be just that people are watching porn, it could be that people are on the internet more often, right? You guys heard of internet addiction? There's actually some controversy about whether the internet can be addicting or not. But if people are spending more time on the internet, they might consume more porn, and they might not be out to rape people. So this is another explanation for these data that would say, no, it's not that porn rules. We shouldn't give porn to kids. There's something else going on here, right? If you look at other data, you can come up with an opposite sort of conclusion that porn sucks. And again, correlation does not equal causation. So some people noticed that people who were watching more porn, they showed less commitment to their family, to their school, so they had less positive feelings about their family, and they had more violent attitudes. Now, you don't do an experiment if you think that porn is going to make people more violent, right? That would be unethical. So you have to do a correlational study. You find people and you say, how much porn do you watch a day? And he says, 2 hours. And I ask him, how much porn do you watch? And he says, none. And I ask her, how much porn do you watch? And she says, 15 minutes, right? So I get how much porn everybody asks, and then I give them these questions about their attitudes about violence and their feelings towards their family. And you find that there's a correlation. But it's not an experiment, so we can't assume necessarily that there's a causal link, that making people watch porn decreases their commitment to the family. It might be that they're less committed to their family, and that's why they watch porn. Or something else could be going on as well.
But they might not just know the truth. I mean, this is sometimes very confidential information. People just don't like to reveal this.
That's true, that's true. People might not like to reveal their attitudes. But if people were equally unlikely to reveal their attitudes in both situations and basically weren't revealing anything, you would find no effect, right? But you found that people are revealing enough of their attitudes to indicate that there's something going on there. I mean, if anything, I think that people would want to underestimate their porn watching and overestimate their feelings about their family, right? To be what's more socially appropriate. So you would expect this relationship to be weaker than it actually is if people were doing something like this. Another group of researchers found that people who watched more porn were less likely to be sexually satisfied. Another group of researchers found that people that watched more porn were more likely to use prostitutes and were also more likely to engage in drinking. And I would guess that other activities associated with drinking and prostitution might also show more of, like drug use. So, video games. Does playing Mass Effect or Bioshock or these violent video games make people more likely to be aggressive and to kill people in the real world? So, one of the answers was yes on the quiz, and the other answer was no. So there's some conflicting data with this. Some people say it's not the exposure to the violence, but it's the competition that makes people more violent. Do you guys know Mario Kart? So it's this fun little game, and it's really not that violent. I mean, you do throw shells at each other, and the shells kind of make an explosion, but you just come right back and go on. Right? You're not killing anyone, there's no blood, but you're engaging in competition. And if you want to end the competition, or if you want to win the competition, you need to be more aggressive. So it might not be surprising that they found that it's the competition, not necessarily the violence, that predicts aggression. Other people found that people who use video games excessively, 5 or more hours a day, demonstrated more sadness, more suicidal thoughts, more plans of suicide. There's discussion of gaming addiction. Lots of times when people are addicted to something, it has negative effects in other areas of their life, which causes depression and sadness and suicidal thoughts. These guys found that people who played more video games were more likely to take risks. Maybe they play this video game where people are jumping from rooftop to rooftop and they see this and think, oh, I want to do it too. I don't know. These were not, again, experiments. These are correlational studies. So there's some demonstrations that video games can affect people, but it might not be the violence in it. All right, next class we're going to talk about basic visual anatomy. We'll talk about some cool illusions. We'll talk about how culture can actually influence the way that you see.